another difficult situation again. And unfortunately, today you got the teacher who wants you to know for certain that even if you attain complete enlightenment, total human freedom in this lifetime, you will still be subject to the universal human difficulties of backaches, colds, traffic, bills, and all the aversion and clinging that arise from them. There's no escape. No one makes it out here alive either, by the way. Maybe I'm the first one to tell you, but I'm just letting you know. And I'm not even going to give you the pep talk about persevering, pushing through, doing what it takes. What did I say? Going the extra mile, ignoring your resistance. That kind of thing has its place. And the Buddha had a lot to say about diligence and ardence. Kind of ardently holding fast, showing up in that incredibly real way that is sitting on the cushion and simply opening yourself to your present moment experience and refusing to allow yourself to be carried here and there by our kind of habitual compulsive patterns of avoidance and clinging. There's a classic quote from the suttas where the Buddha says, practice, practice, practice. What will you say when the king of death and his army comes to you? Like, now is the time. And I appreciate that sentiment, but that's not this talk either. Rather, I want to invite you to look at resistance, overwhelm, and your strategies of avoidance and embrace them. We are all taught, if you've ever read anything about Buddhism, everybody knows there's this thing called the Four Noble Truths, which is the most perfect encapsulation of the Buddha's teachings. This is absolutely incorrect. The way the Buddha actually framed the Four Noble Truths in the suttas, if you actually go back to the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, he doesn't say life is suffering. He doesn't say this is something that I want you to believe. I'm going to issue this edict of faith and you have to believe it. And that also, if you do take that on faith, then that presents you with the unfortunate and unhappy job of telling other people, including yourself, that life is suffering, when every single person in this room knows that life isn't suffering. People can be deeply and truly happy, absent meditating a single day. Every moment presents such delight in this wonderful, amazing, ephemeral, temporary world. Rather, the instruction is embrace dukkha, understand dukkha, understand that there is suffering in your life. Are you able to, when avoidance, when aversion, when anxiety arises, are you able to meet it with your kindest, wisest, and calmest, open-handed grasp? Can you be fully present in this moment to whatever is arising? The Buddha discovered that his own thoughts and feelings, especially his feelings that were unpleasant, especially his feelings that arose in the face of difficult parts of his life or parts of his psyche, were the most valuable tools at his disposal to understand deeply, to touch deeply his very personal patterns of thinking and behavior. This Buddhist path was not presented to the world as a way to save all living beings. This was literally one person who followed this thread of what is arising and what's now arising. and what is now arising. And if you read the suttas with an eye towards, he's talking to himself and I'm just happening to overhear it. You can see the way everything was a thought experiment with this person. Noticing the thoughts arising. Is this skillful or unskillful? Is this will this cause happiness or sadness? What is arising and where does it come from? This is also our own opportunity. A meditation teacher named Jason Garner says, another way of looking at mindfulness is learning to use our thoughts and emotions as information instead of subconscious triggers. We observe our thoughts and emotions as a way of gathering information that we can use consciously to make mindful and kind decisions about our lives. So what a shame it would be in the face of aversion arising, in the face of stress or anxiety arising. What a shame it would be to miss that opportunity to really show up and be like, what's going on? What's happening and why? And can I meet this experience? And maybe I don't know what's happening. Maybe I can't understand what's happening. But even learning how we respond to stress, to aversion, to clinging in that moment is so valuable. It's like we're running endurance tests on TVs in a factory somewhere. We want to see how many times you can push a button before it breaks, or how far you can drop it from before it breaks. Stress, aversion, upset, etc. is going to come into our lives. And rather than using mindfulness as a bypass mechanism, as a way to kind of beat or trick or get out of these messy, yucky, unpleasant emotions that arise and pass away, we're presented with the opportunity to, with our most reverent and kind attention, observe what's happening. And really learn deeply about ourselves as a person. When you notice resistance, avoidance, clinging, train yourself to cultivate great curiosity. What is this? What does it feel like? The interesting thing too is that training yourself to be fully present and aware of whatever's going on for you emotionally. Emotions always inhabit the body first. I'm sure this is something we're kind of all familiar with a little bit. This is a recent neurological kind of insight, but generally speaking, and I'm sure this has happened to everybody here, the person next to you knew you were upset before you did. Or you didn't know how upset you were until somebody said something else, and all of a sudden you were in full neurological agitation. That happens to me all the time, where someone's like, are you mad? I'm like, no, of course not. So this ability to kind of drop into and bring our most kind and open and spacious awareness is only possible when we develop this kind of curiosity about what's going on. Because that's the other thing about a lot of these physiological kind of emotive states that are so agitating for us. Anxiety, stress, frustration, anger. Generally speaking, they're sufficiently emotionally agitating that we want to avoid being present for them at all costs. So it's usually our coping mechanisms that are more destructive than the feelings themselves. So I'm having some kind of emotional reaction, I'm having some kind of feeling, and then in my absolute panic to avoid having to be present for it or hold it or look at it, I'm going to eat a dozen brownies or insert whatever unskillful thing I could choose to do in that moment. Surf the internet for an hour and a half, whatever. The other part about this that might not be so obvious is that whatever experience you are having, especially whatever unpleasant, scary, agitating experience you are having, is so deeply personal to you, is so utterly unique. No one else in the world is having this experience like you are. It's so valuable to get this kind of crystal clear indication, because it's easy to sit in a calm state and be like, oh, I'm so calm, this is great. There's not a lot going on, and you're just training your attention, your concentration. That's wonderful. But when you're at work and somebody says something to you that you don't like, what an amazing personal opportunity. Like, what is your experience of frustration like? Every single person in this room has a different way it registers in their body. Additionally, as kind of a sneaky back way, the great part about this, one of the great parts about this mindfulness practice is that the concentration practices, developing the faculty of concentration, is naturally stabilizing. So you have a strong emotion arise, and you bring your concentration, your sensory clarity to whatever's going on, and it naturally starts to kind of take a little bit of the edge off of your hyperarousal. And it provides a little bit of space so you can actually observe it in a less agitated way. Because if there's one thing I know about myself, it's when I'm angry or anxious, my thinking processes go out the window. So having good habits around seeing these kinds of emotional, physiological agitation and patterns of avoidance as signals, as flags to be like, oh, what's happening here? And bringing your attention to it not only automatically kind of drops the level down a bit and provides us some space to actually look at it in a more clear and kind way. Probably my favorite forest monk of all time, Ajahn Chah from Thailand, said, most people still do not know the essence of this meditation practice. They think that walking meditation, sitting meditation, and listening to Dhamma talks are the practice. These are actually only the outer forms of practice. Real meditation practice takes place when the mind encounters a sense object. That's the place to practice, where sense contact occurs. Someone tells you something you don't like, there's resentment. Someone says something that you like, we experience pleasure. That is the place to practice, at the point of contact. My friend noticed when I was reading this quote to her that it's interesting that in the quote, Ajahn Chah says, when someone tells us something we don't like, there is resentment. Externalized. Oh, look, you said something I don't like. You're not a good person. And then someone says something we like. Here is pleasure. So it's interesting too, the way we externalize. And this is, of course, absolutely in keeping with something comes up in our life, a difficult person, a difficult situation, a hard choice. That's a problem. It may be that that's not actually a problem. Or it may be that the majority of your problem is coming from our reactions to it. Nice, right? So, And just by way of wrapping up kind of my little commercial before I take questions, it's just so interesting to me the way the practice is generally outlined with concentration, samatha, mindfulness, sati, and wholesome heart states, Brahma Viharas. It's so interesting the way concentration, even in the lab, you hook someone up to an fMRI and you're watching their brain in real time. They have some kind of agitated, nervous hyperarousal, have some kind of concentration practice in place, bring your concentration to the breath, bring your concentration to the sensations of the body, immediately starts to de-escalate. And then with mindfulness, we start to cultivate this real, not only sensory acuity, but this ability to kind of blow out our awareness and be holding that space where things are making contact. And we have that kind of presence of mind to notice them when they arise and notice them when they unravel and pass away, the way all phenomena does. And then by way of helping us in our day-to-day, in our moment by moment, cultivating these wholesome heart states, the chief of which is metta, giving us an emotional and psychological framework to kind of deal with not only our own avoidance and our own issues and our own challenges, but those of the people around us. Because they also, every single person around you, is having their own struggles with their own clinging and aversion and confusion. So for me personally, even though I was not planning on coming here today, and I was actually worried about coming here today because giving a 25, 30-minute talk to y'all, all of whom are my senior meditators, is a little bit anxiety producing. But I'm really glad I showed up, and I'm really glad I did the preparation necessary. And by way of segueing out, does anyone have any questions? And take your time.